Okay, I've been waiting all year to talk about this one. Long-time subscribers will know that I love 2D belt brawlers, especially retro pixel art beat-em-ups, and Vengeance Hunters is all of these things. This is a new game, but it was developed for the Neo Geo and the limitations of that platform. For the uneducated, the Neo Geo is a cartridge-based arcade system that came out in 1990, which has an equivalent home console. It was significantly more powerful than the Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, and it was also significantly more expensive. Having been developed for the Neo Geo means that you can play this on original hardware, and there's a physical edition if you have a spare $400. I have a lot of older systems, but sadly not a Neo Geo. Thankfully, Vengeance Hunters is available for all modern platforms too, at the slightly more affordable $20 US or $29 Australian price point. For this review, I've been playing the PS5 version. Conceptually, Vengeance Hunters is similar to the excellent Final Vendetta from a couple of years back. It's a classic style beat 'em up, so you choose from one of 3 characters and fight your way across the screen from left to right. What makes this one unique is how it regularly mixes things up on the gameplay front. The TLDR is I really like what Nalua Studio has done here. For the most part, it's a fairly typical brawler, but there's a number of interesting design choices that make it unlike anything else. This uniqueness might turn some people off, but overall I reckon it's a solid game, and if you're a fan of the genre, you'll probably feel the same. But let's dig into the nuances and discuss what makes Vengeance Hunters so special. Like a lot of recent retro beat-em-ups, Vengeance Hunters has a slightly more fleshed out story than the games of the era it's emulating. The story is told through a combination of text and animated cutscenes that bookend each stage. It's a fairly conventional story about the world being taken over by evil forces, this time it's aliens, and it's up to our 3 heroes to seek vengeance for this oppression. Each character has their own story and ending, although they all follow the same plot beats. Still, it's one of many reasons to play through it multiple times. The writing is pretty amusing, but if you couldn't care less, you can easily skip it. I think the most polarizing part of this game is likely to be the character design. Not necessarily what they look like, they're different for sure, but how they play. Because Vengeance Hunters doesn't strictly adhere to the typical beat-em-up character archetypes. They all have a light, heavy, and signature attack button, and every character can run and jump too. Additionally, each character has a charge attack and a special attack that costs some of your life bar. The basic combos, while visually and functionally different, are performed using the same commands, so the fundamentals for all 3 are the same. What makes them unique, beyond the difference in damage and speed, is their signature attack. This is the defining characteristic of how they play. For example, Looney can fire his fist to either juggle enemies in the air or use it for crowd control. The way he can juggle enemies is very different to the way that Candy and Golem can. Strength and speed is used to categorize them to a degree, like Candy being fast and weak and Looney being slow and powerful. Beyond this though, their movesets aren't what you might expect. Golem, for example, can throw enemies and perform a pile driver, but surprisingly isn't the tank of the 3. Juggling enemies and maximizing the damage dealt in a single combo, especially to the bosses, is critical. You'll want to do as much damage to as many enemies as possible because they keep coming thick and fast. Launching enemies is easy, but the window you have to extend the juggle is quite tight. You can wall bounce enemies too, which if done successfully can help you extend your combo. The special attack that drains your life is also quite risky. It can do big damage to multiple enemies, and you can gain the health required to use it back by continuing to attack and not getting hit. If you do get hit though, you lose the grey part of your life bar, and this can be a substantial chunk of health. I really love the level of risk reward here, because it can be a very effective tool for dealing with groups of enemies and for dealing big damage to a boss. If you fuck up however, you put yourself at risk of losing a life. This game has a lot of environmental hazards as well, which is another area where it feels unique compared to other brawlers. You have to deal with these while fighting enemies at the same time, so you're often tracking multiple threats, which gets pretty chaotic in the last 2 levels. Each stage has its own unique visual style and introduces new enemy types and hazards. There are the typical health and points pickups to find, but the most interesting items are the weapons. These replace your signature ability with a weapon that hovers above your head. They have a limited amount of ammo and disappear when it's depleted. You can use them to simply deal damage, but they're most effective when used to juggle and extend a combo. There are also subzones in every stage that you'll have to find. These usually present some kind of challenge, like fighting a bunch of extra enemies. They're definitely worth seeking out though, because they pay out with valuable goodies and collectibles. One of the best moments in the game is also in one of these hidden areas. At the end of each stage you'll fight a boss, and again they're all unique and present a challenge. They're just really well designed and fun too, and with the exception of one of them, you never fight the other bosses more than once. There's a handful of minigames thrown in for good measure as well. These are pretty basic and don't last long, but like the rest of the game, they're well executed. They're not especially difficult, although I like the challenge of perfecting each one to maximise my score. Like the boss fights, you only play these once, so they remain entertaining on repeat playthroughs. So yeah, if it wasn't obvious, Vengeance Hunters is not an easy game, unless you stick it on easy. Mashing alone definitely won't be enough to make it to the final stage, let alone defeat the final boss. On the default difficulty and above, maximising your DPM through combos and juggling is essential. In saying that, it's not a super hard brawler in the grand scheme of things. Once you learn each stage and how to tackle the bosses, subsequent playthroughs become much easier. If you find all the collectibles and beat it on the hardest setting, there's a couple of extra modes to unlock. Vengeance, which is the hardest setting, is no joke either. From what I can gather, it's essentially twice the amount of enemies and fewer continues. It supports up to 2 players in local co-op, although this seems to up the ante quite a bit. Multiplayer also allows for some new juggling and combo possibilities. Sadly, there's no online multiplayer, so you're going to need 2 controllers and a buddy next to you. The presentation here is exceptional. I discovered this game via a pixel artist on Twitter who worked on the game by the name of Kersey. It was the huge and beautiful character sprites that grabbed my attention, but the stages are equally well designed and colourful. The animation work is also superb. Top to bottom, the presentation is primo, and bearing in mind what it's designed to run on, it's incredible what Nalua have achieved. In the options, you get a number of different screen filters, and you can also change the background. In other games, I normally set this to black, but these are some of the nicest backgrounds I've seen, and I really appreciate the dark variants of each one. Additionally, you get a couple of scaling options. What you've been watching in this video is the integer scaling, which in theory should be the sharpest. I honestly can't see much, if any, difference between this and maximum though. The music isn't bad, it's appropriately retro, and I think it fits this style of game perfectly, although I would have preferred something more modern, like what was done for Final Vendetta. I don't think this would have made it objectively better, it's just my preference. I don't really have any complaints. The button layout is a bit weird, but you can change that in the settings easily enough. Otherwise, this plays as good as it looks, and it has heaps of replayability through its deep combat and various secrets. And if you're a fan of 80s pop culture, there's heaps of little nods and Easter eggs to discover. It's a bargain too. I kind of feel like $29 Australian is almost too cheap, so there's really no reason not to give this a go. I believe this is Nalua Studio's first game, and it's an absolute banger, and I'm definitely looking forward to what they do next.
Go, go, go.